Hey, 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 folks, welcome to the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast, where sheep and goat production is not just our hobby, it's our bread and butter.
Hey, good day, folks. It's Leon with Lost Creek Wholesale. Matt and I are back again for our first question and answer episode, and we have quite a list to go over here, and we're going to take a crack at it. What do you think, Matt?
Sounds good. I'm excited about getting to these questions here. First, we started out, we were a little slow coming in. Now here recently, it seemed like we've been getting a bunch. So it's good to see the listener participation and excited to answer some questions. Now, we'll probably maybe skim over these questions a little bit, give a quick answer. A lot of these questions we'll probably come back to with a episode focused around that. For instance, we have several questions on sheep minerals, so we'll kind of answer the questions here today, and then probably in the future we'll come back and do more of a deep dive into some of those questions. But that's our plan.
Sounds good. So question one is sheep mineral options. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but we had the question wondering what are some good sheep mineral options? And this is something we could take way off into the weeds. But Matt, what's the first one that comes to your mind?
We've been using the Premier One for years. So Premier One has a mineral pack. You mix it with salt, and they have some, you can add vitamin A, D, and E in as you need it for if you're going on stored feed or so sheep in the barn. Um, I also like it because you can add extra calcium and phosphorus in if you need it, which most of the time you don't, but if you need it, you can add that in. So Premier One's mineral pack is the first one that comes to mind because it's available for everyone. It's cheap to ship because it's just a small pack. Very economical. I feel like it hits most of the things you need for sheep and goats. They have a goat pack as well. So that would be the first one that comes to mind for me.
Yep, I agree. That's what we've been feeding the last while. And
Yeah.
it is what is it, a 2 pound pack?
It's a 5 pound.
Five pound pack.
Yeah.
And then if you want to add the AD&E, they have an AD&E packet, and it just goes in a 50-pound bag of salt. I put mine in a little cement mixer I have that I use only for mixing mineral, plug it in and let it run for a bit, dump it out in a tub.
Yep, I do the same thing. I went to Harbor Freight and bought one of their little cement mixers for $100 or whatever, and never mind, I had to fix the switch before I could even use it right out of the box, but it has been working for me ever since quite well. So yeah, that's much better than trying to mix it in a barrel or bucket, trying to dump it back and forth.
Right. And I will put links in the show notes here to the Premier One sheep and goat mineral and their AD&E packet.
Yep.
Another one I think of is the DuraFirm. I know we had Stan Huber on there a couple of weeks back. He's a DuraFirm dealer. We got to talking off the recording, I guess. We got in a really good discussion on mineral. We almost should have recorded it, but
Well, it ended up with Stan shipping me a skid of minerals and their lick tubs as well. So we'll report back on that in a year or so, probably see how my results were. So I did switch to DuraFirm. I'm gonna give them a try here and see how they work. But I'm kind of excited about that. It's maybe a little more of a high-end mineral, so we'll see if it pays for me to use that. But
yep, time will tell. What's another one that's pretty readily available?
So another one that actually just recently a couple people told me they used and really like is the Blueprint mineral from Crystal Licks. My understanding is they have a mineral tub. Crystal Licks has a protein tub too, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the Blueprint mineral tub that people have told me works really well for them. But yeah, that would be another one to consider.
And those of you that are in at least eastern end of Pennsylvania, Sporting Valley Feeds sells sheep mineral and a goat mineral that is a very decent product.
Yeah. I think they were mixing their own, if I'm correct. I haven't checked with them in a little while, but that's what they were doing. And yeah,
Right.
I felt like that was a good mineral too. So there's lots of good options out there. There's also lots of terrible options out there. So do you have a kind of a go-to land for, or I don't know how to say it, but what do you stay away from, or what do you recommend people stay away from as far as minerals go? Because I feel like there's a lot of really crappy minerals out there.
There's a lot of minerals that I think have too many fillers in, for one thing. And some that probably don't have the elevated levels of A, D, and E, and some of the other things, like some of the minerals we just listed. They're just they make the farmer feel good, really. That's just how I feel about it. They're putting something in front of their animals. I don't want to list any names, I don't think, but
Yeah,
I don't know. There's a few out there that I would.
Well,
I'm gonna call them grocery store options.
Yeah, outlet store options. Your Tractor Supply
I would
minerals.
watch, yeah. I would watch that type of stuff.
Consumption of most of these minerals is based on the salt content of the mineral. So the higher your salt content is, the lower your consumption will be. And that's something to keep in mind if you're comparing what a mineral has in to another mineral is for instance, if one mineral only has 30% of salt in, and another one has 50%, or let's say 60% salt in, the one with 60% hits the levels of like calcium and phosphorus or AD and E could be half, or should be half of what the 30% salt is, because they're going to consume half as much. If that makes any sense, just keep in mind your salt content is going to regulate how much intake they have, and that's going to affect your cost too. So if you have one that's let's say $20 a bag, but it only has 15% salt in, they're going to consume a lot more of that, which will up your cost per day. So I don't know. Those are all things to keep in mind.
A lot of, so just Durafirm, for example, is they have a sheep and a goat option, and the one's 18% salt and the other one's 19, I believe. And that's a pretty, I would say 18 to 23, somewhere in there is where quite a few of the ones that I've looked at labels are.
Yeah. And then like the Premier one would obviously be much higher in salt content. So if you're only putting the 5-pound mineral pack in, your salt content's pretty high in that mineral. So your consumption will only be like, I think they figure quarter ounce per head per day on the Premier mineral, versus to a lot of your others, they might figure half an ounce per head per day, or even more. Like the Durafirm, I think they figure closer to 3/4 to an ounce per head per day.
Right.
So those are things to keep in mind as far as your cost goes for minerals. And I would also say, you don't have to feed the most expensive mineral, but you do want a good mineral that gives them what they need. I don't know, Leon, do you have any opinions on, I run into guys all the time that are just feeding Redmond salt or some other product like that that's not really a free choice mineral. It's just a salt product that maybe has some extra minerals in. And it might, depends what your flock's needs are. If you have pretty good forages, that might be all you need, but it's not really a balanced mineral.
Yeah, I think Redmond salt is a good product, but I just don't feel it's complete enough.
Yeah.
Especially some areas. We have
Yeah.
some very depleted soils some places.
Sure.
And if your soils are depleted, your forages are going to be depleted, your grain's going to be depleted. Where are you going to get it from?
Yeah.
I just know, like, for example, here in my area, my magnesium is like very, very, very low.
Yeah.
And I often wonder how that should play into, I don't know how low it has to be before I need to start making a change to my mineral program, but
There are some companies out there that'll mix custom minerals for your needs. If you are in somewhat of a depleted area, that might be a good option to look into what companies offer a custom mineral for your area.
and they would mix it based on probably on your forage analysis
Mhm.
and stuff like that. I don't know if they
Yeah.
look at soil or not, but probably forage would get them what they need.
Yeah, they'd probably just be looking at forage analysis. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so like here we have, I mean, we have good soils. We're pretty well balanced. So if we're out grazing, our mineral needs are typically pretty low. If we are in the barn on even on dry hay, but especially if we're like on corn silage, alfalfa, TMR, which is our typical, we definitely need a good mineral in there to help balance that out. But if you're out there grazing a diverse cover crop or diverse grass species with some legumes and stuff in, they can be getting most of their mineral needs out of that forage. So that's where Redmond salt might be all you need on top of it. But I personally, I just rather spend a little extra money and make sure they have the minerals they need.
Right. So that kind of takes us right into there's two more questions that I think we should just cover right along with this. Leroy from Kentucky wonders, he says, I've been trying to understand copper. I've always heard that copper is toxic, but then I hear people are using it and it works. Someone told me it can build up and become very toxic. What are your thoughts?
So is this where we put in the disclaimer of we are not nutritionists, we're not veterinaries. Nobody wants to touch the copper subject. So whatever we say here, take it with a grain of salt.
and at your own risk.
And at your own risk. If you kill your sheep following our advice, we do want to hear about it, but we're not responsible.
There you go. And I think both of us are feeding copper currently, right?
Some, yeah.
On a
Yeah.
So the big copper question. So first of all, there's very few, if any, vets or nutritionalists that will want to nail down a number and say you can feed this much.
Yeah.
They will tell you that what the book says, a sheep can't handle more than so much. It does seem like there's some evidence that especially hair sheep, at least Katahdins, and I think some of the other hair breeds, either need more or can handle more, or maybe both. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I would say both.
Need more.
Yeah.
If they need more, then I guess they can handle more. So
yeah, and some people's so oftentimes people think, well, sheep don't need copper, which is not true.
Right.
They do need copper. The challenge is it can also be very toxic to them. And and where you really run into trouble is they store it up, anything extra, they store up over time, and then it can become toxic. So like you could be using a mineral program for 2 years with high copper in, and then all of a sudden you start running into issues with copper being toxic to them. So that's why everybody kind of backs away from it. But there is, I mean, they need copper. If they're have the copper they need, they'll fight off parasites better. Hoof health will be better. If you struggle with foot rot, you'll have less issues with it. They need copper. The challenge is finding out how much they need. And the big challenge with that, I mean, you would think you could just look at a forage analysis and say, well, our copper's pretty low. We obviously need more copper. And you can do that, but it's also tied in with other, um, man, other nutritions will affect your copper availability. So it's complicated.
And a lot of sheep feeds, commercial sheep feeds anyway, and maybe even some commercial sheep minerals have molybdenum. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
And that binds up copper, makes copper unavailable. So,
Yep.
Matt, you and I both know a farm that had literally had a sheep dying from copper deficiency.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they took the molybdenum out of the feed
Yeah.
because his forages and feedstuffs were that low in copper. Plus, the feed had molybdenum in it, which was
Yeah.
tying up any copper there was and making it unavailable to the sheep.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a different story in itself.
But that was kind of an extreme case because, but I think it shows what the industry thinks a lot, because the feed company probably had that molybdenum in there to kind of cover themselves to make
Right.
sure they don't get copper toxicity.
Right. So, there is one way. I guess I'm just going to back up and say that I have been swapping back and forth feeding Premier One's sheep premix or their goat premix. Their goat premix has copper.
Yeah.
I don't really have a rhyme or reason to. I've probably been feeding more of the goat mix the last couple of years than I have the sheep mix. I'm a little bit scared, so every now and then I keep switching back to the sheep mix when I mix a batch.
Yeah.
But there is a way you can get a little more scientific about it. You can do blood testing or take liver samples. You have a sheep you butcher, it should probably be a healthy animal, not just some sheep that died cutting a sample of liver, sending it in.
You should probably do a couple
And you
because,
should, yes,
yeah,
to
just
get
one.
a real picture of where you're at. You
Yeah.
can send it in. I can't tell you off the top of my head. If somebody wanted to know for sure, I could get you that information. But you can send it in and they can tell you what the copper levels are.
Yeah.
If they're way off the charts, if they're below what they should be, that kind of stuff. And that can give you a bit of a handle on where you're at with your copper levels.
Yeah. 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 Which, I mean, that's if you're trying to get it dialed in, that would be a good approach, especially if you feel like you're in an area that's low in copper, and you want to feed pretty high levels, or what I would consider pretty high levels. You should probably be testing to make sure you're not overdoing it. I'm doing the same as Leon is, or I should say. With the Premier Mineral, I would just put in a pack of goat minerals every once in a while. So I'm doing more of the sheep minerals, but I would use the goat minerals every once in a while, just to get some copper in there. So it's not an easy answer, but like Leon said, basically we can get away with feeding more copper to our hair sheep, and we should be feeding more copper. It's not easy to know how much, but we should be feeding some copper. And even in wool sheep, I think there's scenarios where people should be feeding more some copper.
I do think in the wool sheep, there's a few breeds though that are have extremely low tolerance for it. I want to say Texel is one of them, but I better not. I'm
I
not sure. I
I
have
don't
heard there's a
know.
couple breeds anyway that have very little tolerance for
I
it.
might I
Hey,
might
that's
find I
yeah,
might
that is
find out if it's taxels, because like I said, we're feeding some copper. We have taxels in our flock, so
yeah, I could be wrong. For some reason, that's what came to my mind first when
okay.
but
This call is sponsored by Lost Creek Wholesale, your universal feeder distributor in US and Canada. Looking for a way to supplement your livestock with ease? Consider a saliva lick feeder. Universal Feeders saliva lick feeders offer the ability to restrict livestock's intake to a preset amount, determined by the adjustment bar depth and width on the feeder. By narrowing the width and depth of the feed in the groove, this gives us the ability to limit the amount of feed that will stick to a sheep, goat, or cow's tongue. Using Universal Feeders' patent pending easy adjustment system and saliva lick feature, we can limit sheep and goats to less than 1 pound per head per day and cattle to approximately 6 pounds per head per day. We also offer creep gate attachments for both small lambs and kids. Visit our website at www.lostcreekwholesale.com to find a dealer near you or give us a call at 717-310-3641.
question 3, Michael from Pennsylvania is wondering why his sheep go lame. He says his sheep go lame, then they seem to get better, and then they go lame again. So I guess the first thing I would maybe suggest is, what's your mineral program? What are your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, that would be a good place to start. If you have a good mineral program, um, have some copper in there, and there again, like we said, it's hard to know how much. Um, I mean, when we talk about sheep going lame, usually the first thing I go to is hoof rot. Um, but being he's saying they go lame and then get better, I don't think he's dealing with hoof rot. Hoof rot's typically kind of a one-way street. If you don't treat it, they just get worse and worse until they're crawling around on their knees to feed.
Yeah, I wish this fellow would have given me a little more information. Like I have to wonder, where does weather play into this? Like foot scald, and now we're gonna have to decipher what the difference between foot scald and foot rot, but I think they're both a bacteria, right?
Yes, they are.
And the bacteria that causes foot scald can lead to foot rot. It's not foot rot, but it can.
Well, you still need, so to get foot rot, you need to bring that bacteria in. So it's like a disease
And I
that,
guess when I say it can lead to it, is it's the foot scald makes it irritated between their toes, which
yeah.
kind of makes it raw, which probably opens it up for other organisms to get in there.
So if you have hoof rot in your flock, and obviously if you have hoof rot in your flock, not every foot in the whole flock's going to be affected. But then if you have a sheep that gets foot scald, that would open him up to hoof rot for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And weather can probably play a part in this. If the sheep are out on wet ground, mud, I have seen sheep where they'll get a little mud ball between their toes and it
Yeah.
gets dry and hard and they can't get it out. I've literally seen half a walnut shell wedged between a sheep's
Really?
toes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're limping
Uh,
around.
but yeah, with both foot scald and hoof rot in wet weather, they're going to be worse.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, like if you don't have hoof rot in your flock, you won't have problems. But like foot scald's something we get some really wet weather. Like in the fall seems to be worse. We'll have just one or two, out of a couple hundred that get foot scald. and you treat it and it goes away and it's not a big deal. Now, if they would be continuously out there in wet conditions, I think you could see even more. But with a good mineral program, and we should put in there too, certain breeds have much better hoof structure, um, and are going to have less foot problems. For instance, we have Dorpers, and they're kind of known to have more hoof problems, and we see that. It's just, I don't know, they haven't put the selection into them, I think, for better hoof structure as like the Katahdins have. And they just have more foot problems than Katahdins do. So
And
breeds,
the Dorper breed originally came from a pretty hot, dry
yep,
climate, and so hot and dry, you don't have that pressure on the feet.
yep, yep.
So
So I would assume in this guy's case, being say go lame and then they got better, and it doesn't necessarily sound like he's treating at all. I would assume it's probably foot scald. So I would say probably see if there is something, if they're just out grazing and it's kind of a wet area, I don't know. See if you can keep them off that area when it's really wet, or um, have a nice dry barn where they can go in, kind of get out of that dampness. Um, Beyond that, well, your mineral program, like we talked about, um, and there is treatments that you can do, like individual hoof treatments, that you can do to help it. Sactran works great on foot skull and on hoof rot. And while we're on that, you can use Sactran to get completely rid of hoof rot in your flock. It's obviously not cheap because every animal in your whole flock needs to be treated. Rather than to give that treatment protocol here, I will just say that Premier One has a book written by late Dr. Kennedy, that it's called the Pipestone Vet Guide, I think. I think we talked about it
we
on here before. In there, they have a protocol for using Sactran to get rid of hoof rot. It works. I know people that have used it, do it right the first time, and you can get completely rid of hoof rot. Can I
oh,
go on a pet peeve, Liam?
yep, go for it.
So this Sactran treatment for hoof rot, Dr. Kennedy put that out there. I don't know. It's got to be 10, 15 years ago that he put that treatment protocol out there to completely get rid of hoof rot in your flock. And it works. It's expensive. It's not, ideal to go through and give your whole flock a treatment with antibiotics, but it works. And I know of a lot of people that have used it. And if you don't do it right, I've heard of people that did treat, but maybe didn't treat quite all their animals, and then it ends up coming back. But if you do it right, it works. My frustration is I have never heard of that or any industry people that should know talk about using Sactran to completely get rid of hoof rot. Why? I mean, it's been out there. They should know. Like, yeah, I'll have vets tell me, oh yeah, Sactran works, helps with hoof rot. LA200 helps with hoof rot. There's a couple others that, if you have a sheep that gets hoof rot, you can give them that and it'll clear it up. But nobody ever recommended you doing the whole flock and getting rid of hoof rot. In fact, ASI, American Sheep Industry, did a webinar maybe a year or so ago. They had a expert from, I think from UK, that was talking on hoof rot, and I think their title was something about new treatments for hoof rot. And they mentioned Sactran on there. They mentioned that it helps, it works. And they also mentioned that it used to be to treat hoof rot, they really promoted um, trimming the hooves hard and then treating it. They're not really promoting that anymore. But even there, they didn't talk about being able to get completely rid of it in one shot. It was just more, oh, you can do this and you can do that, and Sactran will help. These other drugs will help. And I'm just like, this program has been used and it works, and we can do it one time, can be completely rid of hoof rot, and we can move on with our flock. Why are we not hearing this more from the industry experts? I don't know. I get frustrated with things like that.
Yeah, I remember when I bought my first bottle of Zactran, I had
Yeah.
to educate the vet,
Yeah.
that this is there's data to back this up. This does work, but
Yeah.
and it's very expensive.
It is. So if you have a flock of, let's say you have a flock of 200 ewes, and so basically you're going to treat every animal in your flock twice um, with Sactran. And so, obviously the first thing is wait till you're wait till all your lambs are sold for that year. Get your flock numbers down as far as you can. Get rid of any of those borderline ewes, whatever. And but then everybody needs to be treated at the same time and move to a clean pasture or pen. Then you do it again. I think it's in 10 days or 2 weeks. Um, so it's expensive. If you have 200 ewes, you're looking at spending a couple grand. But hoof rot is just, if you have it, it's just it's like having a constant nosebleed. You do something that helps with it, or you go into a dry season, you don't see too much of it, but then you come back, it gets to wetter conditions, and now you're struggling with it again, and it's just a pain. So I don't know. I've often wondered, like, what's they can't just not know about it. Like I said, Dr. Kennedy put it out there 10 years ago, and I've never had, you know, a vet tell me like, well, we don't like that for whatever XYZ reason. But I've also never had a vet recommend it to me, other than Dr. Kennedy had recommended it. So yeah, that's my pet peeve of the morning.
All right. So we have a couple more here. Which other one shall we cover yet?
Well, let's hit the next one here about the sheep magazines to subscribe to.
All right. Fellow from Iowa was wondering, what are some good sheep magazines I can subscribe to with good sheep information? I like this question. There's one of the first things I think of is things we have Katahdins. I get the Katahdin Herald,
Yep.
and that's hair rolled, not H-E-R, it's H-A-I-R. Hey, look at that. I could actually spell that.
Yep.
You do need to be a member to get the catalog. You get 4 magazines a year, right?
Yeah, it's a
I think
quarterly
it's a quarterly magazine.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, even for guys that are not raising Katahdins, I feel like that magazine is worth the membership. Just very good, practical information in there. Obviously, it's all about Katahdins, but a lot of that'll translate to wool sheep too. And everybody should have Katahdins anyway. So just get the membership.
Did you just say that?
Read the propaganda, and it'll be great. I did just say that.
All right.
You should have some other breeds too, but you should have some Katahdins.
There you got it. So as far as, I think you can get the Katahdin Herald and not be a member. You're gonna have to pay for it.
Okay.
I think there might be a way to do it. But anyway, the phone
Well,
number,
membership's only like 50
50
bucks a
bucks a
year,
year.
so
Yeah.
I don't think they'd, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's an option of just getting the Herald,
Right.
but
Should
maybe there is.
I guess I give the phone number, then people could call it and ask
Sure.
about so the Katahdin Hair Sheep International phone number is 717-335-8280. 717-335-8280. What's another option you think of for a good sheep magazine, Matt?
Well, you had brought up about the Shepherd magazine, which is really the only other one that I can think of off the top of my head here. I used to get that one. I don't anymore, so I'm not very up on what that one looks like. I know at the time when I was getting it, it was probably the one of the best ones out there. So the Shepherd magazine would be one.
I pulled it up right now. It looks like it's going to run you about 30 bucks a year.
Or is that a monthly or is that
Yeah,
a
that's a monthly.
do you still get that one?
I
Is that,
do.
yeah,
Yes.
still pretty good?
Yeah, I still like it. The last while they've been doing like a breed spotlight every month, plus other articles. There's always an article on livestock guardian dogs, I think.
Yeah.
I think every month there's an article on that. I
Yeah.
can't find a phone number for them, but I have an address here, so get your pen ready. It's P.O. Box 443, Lisbon, Ohio, 44432. And that's the Shepherd magazine.
Yeah.
And I will put links in the show notes to these different places too.
I would say that's probably one of the top ones. And I don't know of any other. I mean, some of the breed associations have their own. I saw so I get the Dorper Breed Association one, and that one honestly used to be mostly about their shows and show results. But I saw recently they are putting more production type articles in. So that one might be interesting for the Dorper Association, but I think the Suffolks probably have one too, but I'm not familiar with that one. So
I think
not a
ASI, I think the American sheep industry has a catalog, but it's not, it's more industry news, stuff like that, not so much.
if you're an ASI member and if you're raising sheep, you should be. If you're an ASI member, you'll get their magazine as well.
Right. All right. Do we have time for one more yet?
Sounds good. What do we got?
Let's do that. Yoder is wondering, can I use Cidrs on my meat goat does? I have mostly boar goats and was about ready to wean and was wondering if I can use Cidrs and breed them back. This was in question response to that aseasonal breeding episode we did.
Yeah. The answer again is we're not that, but yes, I don't know if I think the Cidrs that are available are maybe only labeled for sheep. I'm not sure that they're labeled for sheep and goats, but I do know people are using them on goats and having good results too. So protocol should be the same as on sheep, which I think we had covered in the aseasonal breeding, but on the pack they're recommending 4 to 5 days. Most of the industry people are saying 10 to 14 or so days is working better for them. So but yeah, they do work on goats.
And they would still follow up with PG 600 shots and just use the same protocol as what we had outlined in the other podcast episode. So,
yep. There you go.
All right, folks. I think we're going to wrap it up with that. I know there's a few more of you that are going to be waiting on some answers, but we will try to get back and do another Q&A session here before too long. So keep the questions coming. We're having fun.
Sounds good.
We'll see you, folks. Take care.
Once again, this is the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast, where it's more than just our hobby, it's our bread and butter. Thanks for listening, folks. Come back and join us as we converse with farmers and ranchers who are leaders in the industry, interview nutritionalists and veterinarians that can answer questions and offer valuable information. Got that sheep or goat question you'd like answers to, or something you'd like to hear discussion on? Give us a call at 717-310-3641. Select the option for Sheep and Goat podcast questions and leave a detailed message. Or send me an email at leon@lostcreekwholesale.net. Thanks, and see you next time. Universal Feeders, feeding your livestock one lick at a time.